Welcome to the world of science fiction, where extraordinary tales come to life. Enjoy the journey. The laser cutter sliced through the ancient vines with a satisfying hiss, sending the sweet scent of burnt vegetation into the humid air. Ramond, Nightingale. Kane wiped sweat from his brow and squinted at the massive stone doorway emerging from the undergrowth. The Temple of 1,000 Winds loomed before him, its weathered facade telling stories of millennia past. "You know," Ramon said, holstering his cutter, "sometimes I wonder why these temples always have to be in the most god-forsaken corners of the galaxy." Behind him, a sleek metallic drone hovered, its optical sensor glowing a sardonic blue. Padawan, portable automated data analyzer, with advanced navigation, emitted a short mechanical sigh. "Perhaps, sir, because if they weren't, someone would have looted them centuries ago, much like you're attempting to do now." Ramon shot the drone a look. "It's not looting, it's historical redistribution." "Ah, yes," Padawan replied, "the noble profession of historical redistribution. I'm sure that's what they'll engrave on your prison cell, should we fail spectacularly, which my calculations put at a 78.4% probability." Zendora's 3 sons beat down mercilessly as Ramon approached the temple entrance. Sweat plastered his raven hair to his forehead, and his stealth suit, designed for space stations and urban environments, felt like an oven in this jungle climate. The massive stone door stood half open, excavation equipment scattered around its base. Fresh boot prints marked the muddy ground. "Well, shit," Ramon muttered. "Looks like we've got competition." Padawan scanned the area, his processors whirring. "The Crimson Syndicate, based on equipment signatures. They arrived approximately 3 hours ago. Would you like me to calculate your diminishing chances of success now?" "Pass." Ramon drew his blaster and approached the entrance cautiously. He'd tangled with the Crimson Syndicate before, professional thieves and murderers with a penchant for leaving no witnesses. "What I need," he whispered, "is a distraction." As if summoned by his words, 2 figures emerged from the temple. Female, humanoid, with the distinctive crimson jumpsuits of the Syndicate's lower-ranking members. One had the azure skin of a Thrinaxian, the other displayed the slight ridges along her neck that marked her as Velusian. Both carried standard-issue ion rifles. Ramon holstered his blaster and stepped into plain view, a charming smile spreading across his face. "Ladies, what a pleasant surprise. I thought I was the only one who appreciated ancient architecture in this sector." The Thrinaxian immediately raised her weapon, but the Velusian laid a hand on her companion's arm, her eyes moving appreciatively over Ramon's form. "You know, you look familiar," the Velusian said, her voice carrying the distinctive musical lilt of her species. Ramon stepped closer, hands visible. "I have that kind of face. Trustworthy, wouldn't you say?" Padawan hovered nearby, emitting a barely audible electronic groan. "Oh, here we go again. Might I remind you, sir, that your last romantic entanglement resulted in us being shot at by no fewer than 17 mercenaries." Ramon ignored the drone, focusing instead on the warming expressions of the guards. 20 minutes, several outrageous compliments, and one invented story about being an independent researcher later, he was walking into the temple with both women, who had introduced themselves as Tara and Kel. "The boss would skin us alive if he knew we were showing you around," Tara, the Thrinaxian, whispered, having warmed considerably to the charming intruder. "Your secret's safe with me," Ramon assured her, while mentally cataloging the temple's layout, security measures, and the Syndicate members' positions. Padawan followed silently, occasionally scanning the ancient writings on the walls and transmitting the data directly to Ramon's neural implant. "Temple of the Stellar Empress. Warnings of divine retribution. Guardians of the eternal flame." The translation scrolled across Ramon's vision. "So what exactly are you looking for in here?" Kel asked, brushing against Ramon's arm as they navigated a narrow corridor. "Oh, just Historical curiosities. Nothing valuable, he lied smoothly. I'm particularly interested in the central chamber. I've heard there's a remarkable statue there. There is, Tara confirmed, but the boss has been trying to extract something from it for hours. Some kind of crystal embedded in the stonework. The tear of infinity, Ramon thought triumphantly. His client had offered a small fortune for the artifact, enough to clear his debts and live comfortably for a standard year. The corridor opened into a vast circular chamber, its domed ceiling reaching at least 30 meters overhead. Shafts of sunlight pierced through strategic openings, illuminating dust particles dancing in the air. The walls were covered with intricate carvings depicting battles among the stars, species Ramon had never seen, and celestial phenomena that defied explanation. But what commanded the room was the statue. Standing at least 4 meters tall on a raised dais, it depicted a woman of unearthly beauty. Her skin was a soft jade green, smooth as polished stone yet detailed enough to suggest the subtle musculature beneath. Her face was proud, regal, with high cheekbones and full lips curved in what might have been a knowing smile. Short, sleek black hair framed her face in a perfect bob, each strand seeming to catch the light independently. She wore armor that resembled a blend of ancient Earth samurai designs and something altogether alien, form-fitting yet clearly built for war. In her outstretched palm rested a teardrop-shaped crystal that seemed to contain a galaxy within its facets, stars and nebulae swirling in its depths. "Magnificent, isn't she?" came a gruff voice. Ramon tore his gaze from the statue to see a burly man with cybernetic enhancements covering half his face. Corvin Drace, leader of this particular Crimson Syndicate cell and a notorious collector of artifacts, particularly those he could sell to the highest bidder. "Drace," Ramon acknowledged with false cheerfulness. "What a pleasant surprise." "Kane!" Drace spat. "I should have known you'd slither your way in here. Still trading on that pretty face to manipulate my people?" Tara and Kel looked between the men, confusion dawning on their faces. "You know each other?" Kel asked. "Unfortunately," Drace growled. "This man is Ramon Nightingale Kane, and he's here to steal what we're after." Ramon shrugged, dropping the pretense. "In my defense, I was planning to steal it before I knew you were here. Purely coincidental conflict of interest." "Restrain him," Drace ordered. 4 more syndicate members emerged from the shadows, weapons trained on Ramon. Padawan hovered higher, his circuits humming with tension. "Sir, might I suggest a tactical retreat? These odds are particularly unfavorable." "Now, Padawan, where's your sense of adventure?" Ramon's eyes darted around the chamber, calculating. "Besides, I haven't gotten what I came for yet." Drace laughed, the sound echoing off the ancient stones. "The tear of infinity? Good luck with that. We've been trying to extract it for hours. The damn thing won't budge from the statue's hand." Ramon was escorted at gunpoint to the base of the statue. Up close, the craftsmanship was even more extraordinary. Every detail perfect, from the creases in the armor to the eyelashes that seemed ready to flutter. "I've tried laser cutters, molecular disruptors, even good old-fashioned explosives," Drace explained, gesturing to scorch marks on the statue's arm. "Nothing. It's like the stone absorbs energy." Ramon studied the statue's base, noticing an inscription carved in an ancient script. His neural implants struggled to translate the symbols, offering only fragments. "Speak her name. Awaken the Empress. Eternal bond." "What does this say?" Ramon asked, pointing to the inscription. Drace shrugged. "Some religious nonsense. Our linguists think it's a prayer or warning. Nothing useful." "Sir," Padawan interjected, "I've cross-referenced the partial translation with my historical database. This appears to be a reference to the Stellar Empress, Ami de Astria, a figure from approximately 1032 standard years ago. Ami de Astria, Ramon repeated thoughtfully, the name rolling off his tongue with surprising ease. The chamber fell silent. Then, a sound like cracking ice, soft at first, then crescendoing. All eyes turned to the statue as a hairline fracture appeared across its surface. "What did you do?" Drace demanded, backing away. The statue's eyelids, previously closed in serene repose, slowly opened. Emerald eyes glowing with an inner light blinked once, then focused directly on Ramon. "Holy shit," someone whispered. The crack spread across the statue's surface, sheets of stone falling away to reveal living green skin beneath. The woman, no longer stone but flesh, inhaled deeply, her chest rising with her first breath in a millennium. "Gratias tibi ego pro vocans me ex somno," she said, her voice melodious yet powerful, echoing throughout the chamber. "Thank you for awakening me from my slumber." Padawan's processors whirred frantically. "Sir, this is most unexpected. My catastrophe probability calculations have just reached 97.3%. Ramon stood transfixed as the woman, Amy, stepped down from her pedestal, her movements fluid and graceful as a dancer's. She was shorter now, perhaps 180 centimeters, but her presence filled the chamber. The tear of infinity remained clutched in her hand. "You," she said, pointing directly at Ramon, "spoke my name, nomen meum in or tuo, my name in your mouth." Her perfect lips curved into a smile that was both alluring and predatory. "Do you know what that means according to the ancient laws?" Before Ramon could answer, Drace stepped forward, his cybernetic eye glowing red with avarice. "The crystal," he demanded. "Hand it over, whatever you are." Ami turned to him, her expression shifting from warmth to cold disdain in an instant. "Silentium, vermis," she said dismissively. "Silence, worm." She made a subtle gesture with her free hand. Drace's body lifted from the ground, suspended by an invisible force. His eyes widened in terror as he clawed at his throat. "I do not speak to lesser beings," Amy stated calmly, as though commenting on the weather, "especially those who would defile my temple." With another casual gesture, she sent Drace flying across the chamber. He crashed into a stone column with a sickening crunch and slid to the floor, unmoving. The remaining syndicate members raised their weapons but hesitated, clearly terrified. "Please," Ramon interjected quickly, "there's no need for more violence. I'm sure we can resolve this peacefully." Amy turned back to him, her terrifying aura instantly replaced by one of warmth and something akin to affection. "Pacis amor," she said softly, "a lover of peace, admirable, and your name, one who woke me." "Ramon Kane," he replied, "though some call me Nightingale." "Nightingale," she repeated, the word sounding exotic in her accent. "A singing bird from Terra, is it not? How appropriate. A beautiful voice that awakens the sleeping goddess." "Goddess," Ramon echoed. "Sir," Padawan interrupted, "my historical database suggests that Ami de Astria was worshipped as a deity on 47 known worlds before her mysterious disappearance. She was also known as the Conqueror of Stars, the Jade Empress, and, oh dear, the Destroyer of Worlds." The remaining syndicate members finally found their courage, or desperation, and opened fire. Energy bolts streaked toward Ami, who didn't even turn to acknowledge the attack. The bolts simply vanished upon reaching her, as if absorbed into her being. "Irritantes muscae," she muttered. "Annoying flies." With a casual wave of her hand, the attackers were thrown against the walls of the chamber, their weapons crumbling to dust. "Now," she said, returning her attention to Ramon, "as I was saying, according to the ancient laws of my people, the one who speaks my true name and awakens me from eternal slumber becomes my lord and My husband. Ramon blinked. I'm sorry, did you say husband? Etiam, Konyunks Meus, she confirmed, a smile playing on her lips as she stepped closer to him. My husband, my master, the one to whom I am eternally bound. She stood before him now, close enough that he could see the subtle variations in her jade skin, smell a scent like starlight and distant galaxies. The tear of infinity glowed between them, casting prismatic lights across both their faces. This is what you came for, is it not? She asked, holding up the crystal. Well, yes, Ramon admitted, but I usually prefer to at least buy a woman dinner before marriage proposals enter the conversation. Ami laughed, a sound like crystal bells. Your era's customs are charming, but our bond transcends such trivial courtships. You spoke my name, you broke my curse. Now I am yours, and you are mine. Padawan hovered nervously. Sir, I feel compelled to point out that interspecies marriages, especially to beings of unknown origin and questionable divinity status, aren't covered in your health insurance policy. Not helpful, Padawan, Ramon muttered. A low rumble interrupted them, the temple floor trembling beneath their feet. What's happening? Ramon asked, grabbing a column for support. Amy's expression turned serious. My awakening has triggered ancient safeguards, and... She tilted her head as if listening to something beyond human hearing. My enemies have been alerted to my return. Enemies, Ramon repeated. What enemies? The ones who betrayed me, the ones who sealed me in stone for 1,000 years. Her eyes flashed with a dangerous light. They rule your galaxy now, under different names, different faces, but I would know their essence anywhere. The rumbling intensified. Dust and small stones began to fall from the ceiling. We need to leave, Ramon decided, grabbing Amy's arm. Now. To his surprise, she allowed herself to be led, following him toward the exit. The syndicate members who were still conscious were already fleeing. Padawan, find us the fastest route out of here, Ramon ordered. Already calculated, sir. Though I must note that US now apparently includes an ancient deity with homicidal tendencies and a penchant for impromptu marriages. As they reached the temple entrance, the sky above had darkened, not with clouds, but with the unmistakable silhouette of a massive starship entering the atmosphere. Imperial hunters, Ami said grimly. They've come for me, and now for you as well, my nightingale. Ramon stared at the ship, then at the beautiful, dangerous woman beside him, then at the crystal she still held, the prize he'd come for, now seemingly insignificant compared to the complications he'd unleashed. You know, he said with a wry smile, when I woke up this morning I was just planning to steal a priceless artifact and retire to a beach somewhere. Amy's lips curved upward. And instead, you've stolen a goddess and ignited a war that will engulf the stars. She touched his face with surprising tenderness. Fortuna audices iuvat. Fortune favors the bold, my husband. Padawan's lights blinked rapidly. Correction. Fortune favors those with escape plans, which at present we lack. The Imperial ship was descending rapidly, weapon systems clearly charging. Ramon took a deep breath. Well then, let's make one up as we go, shall we? The Imperial hunter ship's landing thrusters kicked up a maelstrom of dust and debris. Ramon grabbed Ami's hand and yanked her into the dense jungle foliage as the craft's searchlights swept across the temple entrance. Your plan is to hide in vegetation? Ami asked, one eyebrow raised skeptically. From beings who can track quantum signatures across galaxies. Ramon ducked lower as armored figures began descending from the ship. No, my plan is to buy us 30 seconds to come up with a better plan. Padawan hovered beside them, optical sensors dimmed to avoid detection. If I may offer a suggestion, sir, Your ship is approximately 1.7 kilometers southeast. If we could reach it before they establish a planetary lockdown protocol—" "They already have," Ami interrupted, her head tilted as though listening to frequencies beyond human perception. "3 orbital destroyers have entered the system. Standard Imperium containment formation." "How do you know that?" Ramon demanded. A faint smile touched Ami's lips. "The same way I know that 12 Imperial hunters are approaching our position, armed with molecular disruptors calibrated specifically to disintegrate organic matter while preserving artifacts." She tapped her temple. "Even after a millennium, some connections remain intact." The Imperial hunters moved with mechanical precision, their armor gleaming obsidian in the fading light. Each stood 2 meters tall, faces hidden behind featureless helmets that reflected the jungle around them. "Those aren't standard Imperial troops," Ramon whispered. "No," Ami agreed. "Those are Praetoria Ultima, the Emperor's personal executioners. I created their order originally." Something like nostalgia flickered across her face. "They've maintained their fashion sense, at least." "Created?" Ramon echoed. "Just who exactly were you?" "There is no time for history lessons," she replied, suddenly alert. "They've detected us." 3 hunters pivoted in perfect synchronization, their weapons trained on the foliage where Ramon and Ami hid. "Padawan! Distraction protocol!" Ramon hissed. The drone shot upward through the canopy, emitting a piercing electromagnetic pulse that momentarily disrupted the hunter's systems. In that brief window of disorientation, Ramon seized Ami's wrist and they sprinted deeper into the jungle. Disruptor fire sliced through the vegetation behind them, vaporizing ancient trees into clouds of molecular ash. The jungle itself seemed to scream as centuries-old life forms disintegrated. "We can't outrun them," Ramon panted, leaping over a fallen trunk. "Not on foot." "Who said anything about running?" Ami replied. She stopped abruptly, turning to face their pursuers. Tempus Pugnandi estimated time to fight. "Are you insane?" Ramon grabbed her arm. "There are 12 of them armed with weapons specifically designed to kill us." Amy's eyes flashed with emerald fire. "There were once 12,000 arrayed against me at the Battle of Antares. None survived." She gently removed his hand from her arm. "Besides, I need to test the limits of my powers after such a long slumber. What better opportunity?" Before Ramon could protest further, she stepped forward, arms extended outward. The very air around her began to shimmer, as though reality itself was bending to her will. The ground beneath her feet cracked in a perfect circle, luminous energy seeping through the fissures. "Venite ad me interfectores," she called, her voice carrying unnaturally through the jungle. "Come to me, killers." The hunters emerged from the undergrowth, weapons raised. Their leader stepped forward, helmet retracting to reveal a face that was barely human, more machine than flesh, with glowing optical implants where eyes should be. "Ami de Astria," the leader intoned, voice metallic and cold. "By imperial decree XK 7734, you are sentenced to eternal containment. Resistance will result in permanent termination." "How formal," Ami replied, a dangerous smile playing across her lips. "And the human, what is his crime?" "Interference with an imperial artifact. Sentence: death." "Ah," she nodded, as if this confirmed something. "Then allow me to introduce myself properly. I am Ami de Astria, Empress of Stars, creator of the Imperium, and this," she reached back to take Ramon's hand, "is my consort. Harm him, and I will ensure that your precious Imperium burns from the inside out." Padawan hovered anxiously above. "Sir, may I point out that antagonizing heavily armed Imperial executioners rarely ends well in my statistical analyses." The hunter commander raised his weapon. Your delusions of grandeur are noted artifact. Compliance will make your containment process less painful. Amy's laughter rang out, clear and sharp as crystal breaking. Compliance was never my forte. She moved with sudden, blinding speed, her hand slicing through the air in a gesture that seemed almost casual. The hunter commander's weapon and the arm holding it separated from his body in a spray of hydraulic fluid and synthetic blood. Before the others could react, she had already closed the distance to the next two hunters, moving like a deadly dancer between them. Where her hands touched, armor crumpled like paper. Ramon stood transfixed, unable to reconcile the elegant, flirtatious woman with this efficient killing machine. Three hunters lay incapacitated in the span of seconds, and she hadn't even broken a sweat. The remaining hunters regrouped, forming a defensive circle and unleashing a barrage of disruptor fire. Ami raised her hand, and the deadly energy beams simply stopped mid-air, hanging suspended like deadly light sculptures before dissolving into harmless particles. "Puericum ludicrous," she muttered. "Children with toys." With a gesture that reminded Ramon of a conductor leading an orchestra, she lifted the entire group of hunters into the air. Their armor creaked and groaned under invisible pressure. "You will return to your masters," she announced, "and deliver a message. Tell them the Jade Empress has awakened, and she remembers their betrayal. Tell them I have taken a new consort from among the humans, and through him I will reclaim what is mine." Her voice deepened, resonating with power. "Tell them I am coming." She flicked her wrist, and the hunters were hurled through the air, crashing into the distant jungle with bone-breaking force. Ramon stared at her, mouth agape. "That was not what I expected." Ami turned to him, the dangerous aura receding, replaced by the warmth she seemed to reserve only for him. "What did you expect me, Amatus? That I would cower and flee?" "I expected us both to die," he admitted. "Or at the very least, to engage in a desperate running battle with slim chances of survival." "There will be time for desperate battles later," she promised, her hand caressing his cheek. "For now, we should seek better shelter. More will come." Padawan descended from his elevated position. "If I may interrupt this, whatever this is, my sensors indicate the Imperial ship is preparing to deploy orbital bombardment protocols. In approximately 7 minutes, this entire region will be reduced to its component atoms." Ramon's survival instincts kicked back into gear. "My ship, it's not far, but we'll never outrun the bombardment on foot." "We won't need to run," Amy said. "Do you trust me, Nightingale?" The question hung in the air between them. Trust her? He'd known her for less than an hour. She'd just casually dismantled elite Imperial troops, claimed to be the creator of the very Imperium that now hunted them, and declared him her consort without so much as asking. Trust was a big word. And yet, "Yes," he found himself saying. "God help me, but yes." Her smile was radiant. She stepped close to him, wrapping her arms around his waist. "Hold tight to me, and your floating servant as well. Technically, I'm an advanced artificial intelligence with autonomous—" Padawan began. "Padawan, just get over here," Ramon interrupted, grabbing the drone and pulling it close. Ami closed her eyes in concentration. The air around them began to vibrate, molecules oscillating at increasing frequencies. Ramon felt a peculiar sensation, as though his very atoms were loosening their connection to each other. "Transfer knows," she whispered. The world dissolved. For an instant that felt like eternity, Ramon existed everywhere and nowhere, spread across dimensions, experiencing every possible version of himself simultaneously. Then, with a sensation like being snapped back by an elastic band, he solidified again. They stood beside his ship, the Nightjar, a modified Corvette-class smuggler vessel that had seen better days but had never let him down. "What How did you—" he stammered, steadying himself against the hull. "Quantum entanglement manipulation," Amy explained casually. "All matter is connected at the subatomic level. I simply reminded our particles that they could be elsewhere." Padawan's systems rebooted with a series of chaotic beeps. That was most unpleasant. My positronic matrix was temporarily experiencing existence in 17 dimensions simultaneously. Also, sir, we have approximately 4 minutes before orbital bombardment. Rahman shook off his disorientation and pressed his palm against the nightjar's identification panel. The entry ramp descended with a hydraulic hiss. "All aboard," he called, hurrying Ami inside. The ship's interior was cramped but functional. A cockpit designed for two, a small common area, cargo hold, and a single cabin. Ramon slid into the pilot's seat, hands flying over the controls. "Engine ignition sequence initiated," Padawan announced, plugging into the ship's systems. 3 minutes to bombardment." Amy examined the cockpit with undisguised curiosity. "Your vessels have become much smaller since my time, and less grandiose." "This isn't exactly a royal flagship," Ramon muttered, focused on the startup sequence. "It's a smuggler's ship, designed for speed and stealth, not grandeur." The engines roared to life just as the first orbital strikes began hitting the jungle, creating expanding rings of devastation. Rahman pulled back on the controls and the nightjar leapt skyward, buffeted by shock waves from the explosions. "Holding structural integrity at 92%, Padawan reported. "Imperial destroyers have locked targeting systems on us." "Of course they have," Rahman gritted, executing a series of evasive maneuvers that strained both the ship and its occupants. "Any suggestions, Divine Wife?" Ami closed her eyes, concentrating. "I cannot affect vessels at orbital distances, not yet. My powers are still regenerating." Disruptor beams sliced through the atmosphere around them as the nightjar climbed higher, the blue sky gradually darkening to the black of space. The Imperial destroyers loomed ahead, massive, wedge-shaped vessels bristling with weapons. "Padawan, stealth protocols," Rahman ordered, diving beneath the closest destroyer. "Engaging electromagnetic dampening and thermal masking," the drone responded, "though I calculate a 72.4% probability they will still detect our engine signature." "Then we'll just have to be unpredictable," Rahman muttered, executing a maneuver that sent them spiraling between two destroyers, using their mass to shield the nightjar from the third vessel's sensors. Ami watched him with growing admiration. "You pilot as though you were born to it." "I was," he replied, not taking his eyes off the controls. "My father was an Imperial Navy commander before he retired." A shadow crossed Ami's face. "Imperial Navy? Then your lineage." "Can we discuss family history when we're not being shot at?" Rahman interrupted as proximity alarms blared. "Padawan, we need a jump vector." "Calculating optimal trajectories," the drone replied. "May I suggest the Peregrinus Nebula? Its ionized gases would provide excellent sensor coverage." "Locked in," Rahman confirmed, hands dancing across the navigational array. "Preparing for hyperspace jump in 3, 2. The nightjar shuddered as a disruptor beam grazed its starboard side. Warning lights flashed across the console. "Starboard stabilizer damaged," Padawan announced. "Hyperspace calculations compromised." "Just get us out of here," Rahman shouted, punching the hyperspace initiator despite the warnings. Stars stretched to infinity as the ship lurched into hyperspace, the fabric of reality bending around them. The violent entry sent them tumbling through the cabin, alarms blaring as the damaged stabilizer struggled to maintain their course. After several nauseating minutes, the nightjar emerged into normal space, trailing sparks and vapor from its wounded side. "Where are we?" Rahman asked, regaining his feet and checking the navigation systems. Approximately 17 light-years from our departure point, Padawan reported. We appear to be in the vicinity of the Kyrillus system, uninhabited, but there is a small moon with breathable atmosphere where we could effect repairs. Ramon guided the limping vessel toward the blue-green moon that hung before them, an oasis in the emptiness of space. Its surface was dominated by ancient, eroded temple complexes similar to the one they'd left on Zendora. Interesting, Amy murmured, studying the moon through the view screen. This was once an outpost of my people, a sanctuary of the Stellae Custodia, the Star Guardians. Your people had outposts everywhere, Ramon asked, initiating the landing sequence. We were extensive in our reach, she replied carefully, before the betrayal. The nightjar settled onto an ancient landing platform, engines powering down with a series of protesting whines. Beyond the ship, the ruins of what must have once been a magnificent complex stretched into the distance, illuminated by the light of a gas giant that dominated the sky. Ramon slumped in his seat, the adrenaline of their escape finally wearing off. So, we're safe. For now. Perhaps this would be a good time for that history lesson? Amy nodded slowly. Yes, but first I need to know something. Ramon Kane. Her emerald eyes fixed on his with unsettling intensity. Your father was Imperial Navy, his bloodline. It must contain traces of the original Imperial houses. Ramon shifted uncomfortably. My father claimed our family descended from some ancient admiral. Never put much stock in it myself. What was his name? This admiral ancestor? Cassius, I think. Cassius Valerius. Why does it matter? Ami's expression froze. Cassius Valerius was not an admiral. He was my first general, my most trusted advisor. Her voice hardened. And the architect of my betrayal. The cabin temperature seemed to drop several degrees. You're saying I'm descended from the man who betrayed you? Ramon asked carefully. It explains how you could awaken me, she said, eyes never leaving his face. The seal was keyed to specific genetic markers. Only one of the bloodline who imprisoned me could release me. A failsafe in case they ever needed my power again. Her hand moved to his throat with lightning speed, fingers pressing against his pulse point. I could end you right now, descendant of Cassius. Your ancestors' blood flows in your veins, blood that deserves to be spilled for 1,000 years of imprisonment. Ramon didn't flinch. If you wanted me dead, I'd be dead already. A tense moment stretched between them, Padawan hovering nervously nearby, weapon systems quietly charging. Then, to Ramon's shock, Ami threw back her head and laughed, a genuine, musical sound that transformed her face from menacing to radiant. "O stultus homo," she said, releasing his throat to caress his cheek instead. "Oh, foolish man, do you think I didn't know? From the moment I awakened, I sensed Cassius's blood in you." "You knew?" Ramon sputtered, bewildered. "And you didn't kill me immediately because—" "Because, my nightingale," she said softly, "when you looked at me, you did not see a weapon to be wielded or a tyrant to be feared. You saw a woman. You desired me for myself, not for my power." Her smile turned mischievous. "Also, you have a much better sense of humor than your ancestor. Cassius was dreadfully serious about everything." Padawan's weapon systems powered down. "Sir, I believe this qualifies as what humans call a relationship red flag. Specifically, the tests partner with death threats variety." Ramon ignored the drone, still processing Ami's revelation. "So my ancestor imprisoned you, and now I've freed you. Where does that leave us?" "Bound," she replied simply. "By ancient law, by cosmic irony, and by choice. Your blood may have been necessary to break the seal, but it was your voice, your spirit, that called to me through the millennia." She leaned closer, her jade skin luminous in the cabin's low light. "The question now is what we do with this bond." "Well," Ramon said, a ghost of his usual rakish smile returning. "Usually when I'm married to a woman I've known for less than a day, I at least try to learn her favorite color before we start discussing overthrowing galactic empires." Ami laughed again. "Emerald, like my skin, like my homeworld's twin suns at dawn." She glanced out the view screen at the temple ruins. "And speaking of bonds, there is a sacred place here where we could perform the proper rituals to strengthen ours. The Temple of Celestial Union stands at the center of this complex." "Rituals?" Ramon asked skeptically. "Nothing alarming," she assured him. "Simply a formal acknowledgement of what has already begun between us. A protection, should my enemies attempt to use you against me," Padawan interjected. "Sir, the ship requires approximately 7 hours of repairs before we can safely return to hyperspace. Might I suggest using this time productively rather than engaging in questionable alien marriage ceremonies? The rituals will provide protection not only for Ramond, but for his mechanical servant as well," Ami added. "The Imperium will not stop hunting us. They will bring resources you cannot imagine to bear against us." Ramon considered his options, which, realistically, were limited. He was stranded on an abandoned moon with a self-proclaimed goddess who claimed to be the original creator of the Imperium that ruled the known galaxy with an iron fist. The same goddess who was, according to ancient laws he didn't understand, now his wife. And strangely, he wasn't entirely opposed to the idea. "All right," he decided. "Let's see this temple of yours. But Padawan stays with us. We'll need advanced warning if the Imperium tracks us here." Ami nodded, satisfaction clear in her expression. "As you wish, my nightingale." She leaned forward and pressed her lips briefly to his, a kiss that sent electric currents racing through his body. "Nunc incipiat verum iter nostrum." Now our true journey begins. Ramon stepped out of the nightjar's hatch, the ancient air of the abandoned moon filling his lungs. The ruins stretched before them like the skeleton of a once mighty civilization, haunting yet beautiful under the gas giant's ethereal light. Ami led him through crumbling archways and overgrown courtyards, her steps confident despite the millennium that had passed since she'd last walked these paths. Padawan hovered protectively nearby, sensors continuously scanning for threats. "The Temple of Celestial Union," Ami announced as they entered a circular chamber. Despite the erosion of time, its magnificence remained. Crystalline columns captured the distant starlight, refracting it into patterns that danced across the floor. At the center stood a raised dais with 2 shallow depressions. "What happens here exactly?" Ramon asked, watching as Amy circled the chamber, touching ancient symbols that illuminated at her touch. "We join," she said simply. "Mind, spirit, essence. It will create a tether between us that not even death can sever." Ramon raised an eyebrow. "That sounds intense for a first date." She smiled, approaching him with predatory grace. "Are you afraid, descendant of Cassius?" "Terrified," he admitted with surprising honesty. "But not of the ritual." Her expression softened. "What then?" "Of wanting this," he confessed. "Of wanting you, despite every logical reason I should be running in the opposite direction." Padawan interrupted tactfully. "Sir, perimeter sensors indicate no pursuit at present. However, I should return to the ship to monitor repairs. I'll leave you to your bonding activities." As the drone departed, Ami took Ramon's hands. "In antiquis temporibus, in novam spem," she whispered, "from ancient times into new hope." The ritual was simpler than Ramon had feared, no blood sacrifice or arcane torture. They stood facing each other on the dais, their hands linked, while Ami spoke words in her ancient tongue that somehow Ramon understood in his soul if not his mind. The chamber's light converged around them, sinking into their skin, weaving invisible connections between them. When it ended, Ramon felt her presence in his mind, not intrusive but comforting, like the awareness of a star that warms you even when you're not looking at it. "Is that it?" he asked. "Are we, whatever we are now?" "United," she confirmed, her eyes luminous. "But there is one more tradition to honor." She drew him close, and this time when their lips met, it felt like stars colliding. The kiss deepened, centuries of loneliness and longing pouring from her into him, his own lifetime of keeping everyone at arm's length crumbling in the face of her fierce devotion. Later, aboard the Nightjar, as Padawan discreetly occupied himself with repairs in the engine room, Ramond and Ami explored their new bond in more physical ways. Her jade skin against his, her whispered Latin endearments the way she claimed him as hers, it transcended mere physical pleasure. In her arms, Ramond found something he'd never allowed himself to seek: belonging. As they lay entwined in the narrow confines of his cabin, the ship safely hidden from Imperial sensors by the moon's magnetic field, Ami traced the line of his jaw with her fingertip. "What happens now?" he murmured against her hair. "War," she replied softly. "Revolution. Vengeance. But not tonight." She pressed her lips to his chest where his heart beat strongly. "Tonight, we are simply Ami and Ramond, finding each other across the impossibility of time." Beyond the viewport, stars glittered like promises. Whatever morning would bring, Imperial hunters, ancient conflicts, galaxy-spanning conspiracies, for this moment they were sheltered in each other's arms, two wanderers who had found an unexpected home. The Nightjar burst from hyperspace with a violent shudder, alarms blaring as the damaged stabilizer struggled to compensate. Ramon's hands flew across the controls, forcing the reluctant ship back under control. "Welcome to Helios Prime," he announced, nodding toward the viewport where a massive space station hung against the backdrop of a swirling nebula. Irregular in shape, it resembled a sprawling metallic coral reef, its modules and habitation rings added haphazardly over centuries. "This is your idea of a sanctuary?" Ami asked, studying the chaotic structure with skeptical eyes. "It looks like a junkyard that achieved sentience." "Best place in the quadrant to disappear," Ramon replied, guiding the Nightjar toward a dimly lit docking bay in the station's underbelly. "No Imperial presence, no questions asked, and more importantly," he gestured to the ship's failing systems, "they have the parts we need." Padawan hovered near the navigation console, his processors whirring anxiously. "Sir, might I point out that Helios Prime is also known for having the highest concentration of bounty hunters outside of Imperial space. If there's a price on our heads—" "There's always a price on my head," Ramon interrupted with a dismissive wave. "That's why we're meeting Liana." Ami's eyes narrowed slightly. "Liana?" Ramon detected the faint edge in her voice and suppressed a smile. "An old associate. Runs the station's information network. If anyone can tell us what the Empire is saying about your awakening, it's her." The docking clamps engaged with a metallic groan. Ramon powered down the engines and turned to Ami, who had donned a hooded cloak that concealed her distinctive features. "Ready for your first foray into modern civilization, Empress?" he asked. She adjusted the hood, a flash of emerald skin visible beneath. "I was conquering civilizations while your ancestors were still discovering fire, Nightingale. I think I can handle a space station. Just remember—" "Yes, yes," she sighed. "No disintegrating anyone who annoys me, no claiming divine status, and no speaking in dead languages." Her lips curved in a mischievous smile. "Though I make no promises about the disintegration part." Padawan's lights blinked in what Ramon had come to recognize as the drone's equivalent of eye-rolling. "I calculate a 97.4% probability that this excursion will end in violence, property damage, or public indecency, potentially all three." Helios Prime's central market heaved with life, a cacophony of species, languages, and commerce that assaulted the senses. Vendors hawked wares from 100 worlds, the air thick with exotic spices and the ozone tang of illegal tech. Ramon navigated the crowded pathways with practiced ease, keeping Amy close beside him while Padawan floated overhead, monitoring for threats. "Your civilization has become remarkably diverse," Amy observed, eyeing a group of methane-breathing Zorians haggling with a six-armed trade minister. "One of the few improvements since your time," Ramon replied, steering her toward a narrow side corridor. "The Imperium may rule with an iron fist, but even they couldn't stop the mingling of species and cultures." They arrived at a nondescript door embedded in the station's inner wall. No sign, no marker, just a single red light above the frame. Ramon pressed his palm against the scanner and waited. "Identify," demanded a husky, feminine voice. "Nightingale, with guests." A pause, then. "You've got nerve showing up here, Nightingale." "When have I ever lacked for nerve, Lee?" The door slid open, revealing a dimly lit room dominated by holographic displays and data terminals. A slender woman with silver-threaded black hair and augmented eyes turned from a central console, her expression shifting from annoyance to curiosity. "I heard you were dead," Liana said, folding her arms across her chest. "Something about stealing an Imperial artifact and getting vaporized by orbital cannons." Ramon grinned. "Reports of my vaporization have been greatly exaggerated." "Clearly." Her augmented eyes scanned Ami, then Padawan. "New friends?" "Something like that," Ramon hedged. "We need information, Lee. What's the Imperium saying about recent events on Zendora?" Liana's eyebrows arched. "You don't know? It's all anyone's talking about." She gestured to a nearby terminal, and a holographic news report sprang to life. An Imperial broadcaster's stern face materialized. "Unconfirmed reports that the terrorist organization known as the Stellar Liberation Front has activated an ancient weapon of mass destruction on Zendora. Imperial forces have quarantined the sector. Citizens are advised to report any suspicious activity." "Weapon of mass destruction?" Ami murmured, an amused smile playing at her lips. "That's you, apparently," Ramon whispered back. Liana switched to another feed, this one a grainy security recording that showed Ami dismantling the Imperial hunters outside the temple. The footage had been edited to make her appear more monstrous, her movements unnaturally jerky, her eyes blazing with digital enhancement. "They're calling her the Green Death," Liana explained. "There's a bounty of 20 million credits for her capture, dead or alive." "Only 20 million?" Amy scoffed. "In my day, I was worth the GDP of entire star systems." Liana's eyes widened. "Who exactly did you bring into my establishment, Nightingale?" Before Ramon could answer, Padawan interjected, "Ma'am, I assure you that compliance with our request for information will be compensated generously and reduce your probability of atomic disassembly to nearly zero." "Padawan!" Ramon snapped. "What? I was being helpful." Liana's hand moved subtly toward what Ramon knew was a concealed blaster. "Perhaps you should start explaining, old friend, before I decide you're more trouble than you're worth." Ramon sighed, exchanging a glance with Ami, who nodded almost imperceptibly. "Lee, what do you know about the founding of the Imperium? The original story, not the propaganda they teach now." "Strange question," she replied cautiously. "Standard history says Admiral Cassius Valerius established the first Imperial Council after defeating the tyrant known as the Jade Empress. Why?" Ami lowered her hood, her emerald skin catching the light of the holo-displays. "Because history, my dear, is written by the victors." Liana's jaw dropped. "By the Void. You're her, the Jade Empress." "I prefer Ami these days," she replied with a slight incline of her head. "The titles grow tiresome after a millennium or two." After a moment of stunned silence, Liana burst into laughter. "Only you, Nightingale, could accidentally wake up a legendary tyrant and somehow end up in her good graces." She shook her head in disbelief. "Let me guess. You need to know how to overthrow the Imperium?" "Actually," Ramon said, "we need to know who really runs it. Not the puppet emperor they parade around for state functions. The real power." Liana's expression grew serious. That's information people die for, Nightingale. We've already got the Imperium trying to kill us, Ramon countered. Might as well make it worth their while. After a long pause, Liana nodded. There's a man known only as the Architect. Some say he's been alive since the founding of the Imperium, kept alive through forbidden technology. He operates from the shadows using a series of clones as the public face of Imperial power. Clones, Ami repeated, her voice suddenly cold. Of whom? No one knows, Liana replied. But I can tell you this. He's obsessed with ancient history, specifically the era of the Jade Empress. She glanced between them. Whatever game you're playing, you're pawns in a much larger one. Padawan suddenly emitted a shrill alert. Sir, Imperial signatures detected entering the station. Multiple tactical teams converging on our location. You led them here? Liana hissed. No, Ami said, her eyes distant. He's found me. After all this time, he still knows my every move. Who has? Ramon demanded. Before she could answer, the room's security monitors flickered, showing armored Imperial troops storming through the market, civilians scattering in their wake. We need to go, Ramon decided, grabbing Ami's arm. Now. There's a maintenance tunnel behind that panel, Liana said, pointing. It leads to the lower docks. Take my personal shuttle. Clearance code, Liana 7 Echo 9. Thanks, Lee, Ramon said, already moving toward the panel. I owe you. More than you know, she muttered, turning back to her console. Now go, I'll wipe the security feeds. They raced through the maintenance tunnel, the distant sound of Imperial boots echoing behind them. Padawan led the way, sensors scanning for the fastest route to the lower docks. You're being unusually quiet, Ramon observed as they ran. Amy's face was set in a grim mask. I know who the Architect is, Ramon, and why he wants me back. Care to share with the class? She hesitated. Not until I'm certain, but if I'm right, this changes everything. They reached the lower docks, a dimly lit hangar housing smaller vessels. Liana's shuttle, a sleek, matte black craft designed for stealth, waited at the far end. Almost there, Ramon encouraged, just as the hangar doors burst open behind them. Imperial hunters filed in, weapons raised, led by a tall figure whose armor differed from the others, ornate, ancient in design, yet enhanced with modern technology. Ami de Astria, the leader called, his voice resonating with unnatural depth. How disappointing to find you keeping such common company. Ami froze, her entire body tensing like a predator preparing to strike. Marcellus. The leader removed his helmet, revealing a face that seemed impossibly familiar, the same strong jawline, the same piercing eyes as... He looks like me, Ramon whispered in shock. Not like you, Ami corrected, her voice tight. Like Cassius. He's a clone. The man, Marcellus, smiled coldly. Not quite a clone, my dear Empress. A descendant, genetically enhanced to preserve the bloodline's purity. I am what your precious Cassius would have become had he embraced his true destiny at your side. Sir, Padawan interjected urgently, the shuttle is prepped for departure. I strongly suggest we continue this family reunion at a safer distance. Marcellus raised his hand and the hunters took aim. I'm afraid no one is leaving. The Empress will return to Imperial custody where she belongs. As for you, Ramon Kane, his lip curled in disgust. Defective offspring of a noble line, your existence is no longer required. Now that's just rude, Ramon muttered, subtly positioning himself between Ami and the Imperials. Padawan, distraction protocol Theta now. The drone shot upward, releasing a blinding electromagnetic pulse that momentarily overloaded the hunter's targeting systems. In that instant of confusion, Ramon grabbed Ami and sprinted for the shuttle. Disruptor fire crackled around them, scorching the deck plates mere centimeters from their feet. They reached the shuttle's ramp, diving inside as Padawan zipped in behind them. "Get us out of here!" Ramon shouted, scrambling toward the pilot's seat. But Ami was faster, her hands flying over the unfamiliar controls with surprising confidence. The shuttle's engines roared to life, and they shot from the hangar just as more Imperial troops poured in. "You know how to fly this thing?" Ramon asked, strapping into the co-pilot's chair. "The principles haven't changed much in 1,000 years," she replied, executing a series of evasive maneuvers that plastered Ramon against his seat. "Besides, I can feel the ship's intentions. Feel the— Never mind." He focused on the tactical display. 3 Imperial pursuit craft incoming. We need somewhere to hide." Ami's eyes gleamed with sudden inspiration. "Not hide. Confront." She pulled the shuttle into a steep climb, heading directly toward the massive Imperial cruiser that hung in orbit above the station. "Have you lost your mind?" Ramon demanded. "Possibly," she admitted, "but it's the last thing they'll expect." Her fingers danced across the navigation console. "Padawan, access the Imperial command frequencies." The drone plugged into the shuttle's communication array. "Done, but I fail to see how broadcasting our position helps our situation." "We're not broadcasting our position," Ami explained, a dangerous smile playing across her lips. "We're issuing an invitation." She leaned toward the comm unit. "Attention, Imperial vessel. This is Ami de Astria, the Jade Empress, rightful creator of the Imperium. I demand an audience with the architect." Silence answered her bold declaration. Then a voice, cold, precise, and somehow ancient, responded. "After 1,000 years, you still lack patience, Empress. Very well. You may approach, but be warned. Any deviation from your current trajectory will result in immediate destruction." The Imperial pursuit craft peeled away, allowing the shuttle to continue unhindered toward the cruiser's main hangar. "This is either the bravest or stupidest thing I've ever done," Ramon muttered. "Why limit yourself?" Ami asked with a wink. "It can be both." As they approached the massive warship, she turned to him, her expression suddenly serious. "Ramon, there's something you need to know before we face him." "I'm guessing it's not good news." She took a deep breath. "The history you know, the story of the tyrant Jade Empress defeated by the noble Cassius Valerius, it's not entirely false." Ramon studied her face. "What are you saying?" "I was not always benevolent," she admitted, her eyes haunted by ancient memories. 1,000 years ago, I was exactly what they say, a conqueror, a tyrant who saw domination as the only path to peace. And Cassius? He was my most loyal general, my closest confidant, and eventually, he was in love with me." Her voice softened. "But as my power grew, so did my cruelty. Cassius saw what I was becoming, a monster who would sacrifice billions for her vision of order." Understanding dawned on Ramon. "So he betrayed you, to save the galaxy from you." She nodded, pain evident in her emerald eyes. "It was an act of love, not treachery. He couldn't bring himself to kill me, so he devised the stone imprisonment instead. His final gift to me, a chance for redemption if I was ever awakened." The shuttle entered the Imperial cruiser's hangar, settling onto the polished deck with a gentle hiss of landing gear. Outside, rows of Imperial troops stood at attention, a corridor of armed force leading to a single figure waiting at the far end. "And now?" Ramon asked quietly. Ami reached for his hand, her fingers intertwining with his. "Now I have a second chance. Thanks to you, Cassius's descendant who woke me not for power but out of simple human curiosity." A smile touched her lips. "There's a certain poetry to it." Padawan hovered nearby, weapon systems discreetly charging. Poetry aside, I calculate our survival odds at approximately 12.8%. Higher than usual then, Ramon quipped, rising from his seat. Let's not keep the architect waiting. They descended the shuttle's ramp together, facing the gauntlet of imperial might. At the end stood a figure that made Ramon's blood run cold, a man who could have been his twin, but older, with eyes that had witnessed millennia of history. "Welcome home, Empress," the architect called. "And welcome, Ramon Kane, the last scion of Cassius Valerius, finally returned to the fold." Ami squeezed Ramon's hand, her voice barely a whisper. "Remember, whatever happens next, whatever he claims, I choose you, not the past he offers." Together they stepped forward to confront the architect of 1,000 years of history and to forge a new future from the ashes of ancient betrayals. The architect watched their approach with the patient gaze of a predator who knew its prey was cornered. His resemblance to Ramon was uncanny, yet distorted by age and a coldness that seemed to radiate from within. "A touching reunion," he remarked as they neared. "The Empress and the descendant of her betrayer hand in hand. Cassius would be disappointed." "You're not Cassius," Ami replied sharply. "You're a shadow, Marcellus, a pale imitation grown in a laboratory." The architect, Marcellus, smiled thinly. "I am his perfected vision, Empress. While you slumbered in stone, I built the Imperium into what it was always meant to be, eternal, uncompromising, absolute." "Looks like a tyranny to me," Ramon interjected, "just with better public relations." Marcellus's gaze shifted to Ramon, contempt evident in his ancient eyes. "You could have been part of this legacy. Your bloodline, Cassius's bloodline, deserved better than a common thief." "Funny thing about legacies," Ramon replied, standing taller. "They're meant to be challenged, not worshipped." Padawan hovered protectively nearby, his sensors scanning the Imperial forces surrounding them. "Sir, I detect multiple weapon locks. They intend to terminate us regardless of this conversation's outcome." "Of course they do," Ramon muttered. "They're Imperial." Marcellus extended his hand toward Ami. "Come, Empress, reclaim your rightful place. Together we can rule as Cassius and you were meant to, bring true order to a chaotic galaxy." Amy's eyes narrowed. "You misunderstand, Marcellus. I was not imprisoned because I failed. I was imprisoned because I succeeded too well." She glanced at Ramon. "Cassius saw what I couldn't. That absolute power corrupts absolutely, even with the best intentions." "Sentiment," Marcellus spat. "The fatal flaw that ruined Cassius. I thought better of you, Empress." "1,000 years in stone changes one's perspective," she replied coolly, "as does finding someone who sees me as a woman, not a weapon." The air around them began to vibrate subtly, a telltale sign of Amy's power awakening. Imperial troops shifted nervously, weapons raised. "This is your final opportunity, Empress," Marcellus warned. "Return to your rightful place, or watch your new consort die before we force your compliance." Ramon felt Ami tense beside him, knew she was calculating how many Imperials she could neutralize before they overwhelmed her. Despite her godlike powers, even she had limits, and Marcellus knew them well. "Wait," Ramon said suddenly, an idea forming. "Before anyone starts disintegrating anyone else, I have a proposition." Marcellus raised an eyebrow. Bold, for a man moments from execution. "Hear me out," Ramon insisted. "You want Ami for her power. The Imperium fears her for the same reason. But what if there's a third option?" "I'm listening, though not optimistically," Marcellus replied. Ramon stepped forward, placing himself between Amy and the architect. "For 1,000 years you've ruled through fear, claiming to continue Cassius's legacy. But his true legacy wasn't the Imperium, it was an act of love. He imprisoned Amy not out of hatred, but because he couldn't bear to see her become a monster. "Your point, thief?" Marcellus demanded impatiently. "My point is that neither of you honored his real legacy," Ramon continued. "You twisted his sacrifice into tyranny. Amy was becoming a tyrant, yes, but look around you. What are you, if not the very thing Cassius fought to prevent?" The words hung in the air, resonating through the hangar. Some of the Imperial troops exchanged uncertain glances. "Fine words," Marcellus sneered, "but words change nothing. Power is the only currency that matters." "Then you'll love this," Ramon replied with sudden confidence. He turned to Padawan. "Execute Protocol Nightingale's last stand." The drone shot upward, projecting a holographic display visible to everyone in the hangar. It showed ancient records, Cassius's personal logs, detailing his agonizing decision to imprison Ami, his love for her, and his hopes that someday someone worthy would awaken her when the galaxy was ready for a better kind of leadership. "How did you—" Marcellus began, genuine shock crossing his face. "Liana isn't just an information broker," Ramon explained. "She's the keeper of the Imperial archives, the true archives, not the propaganda you distribute. She's been waiting for someone worthy of this truth." The final entry played, Cassius's aged face looking directly into the camera. "If you're seeing this, the Empress has awakened. I pray that whoever woke her is worthy of her heart. The Imperium was never meant to last forever, only long enough to prepare the galaxy for true freedom. Marcellus, if you're watching, remember your promise. When she returns, let the truth be known." Silence fell across the hangar. Imperial troops lowered their weapons, confusion evident even through their faceless helmets. Marcellus's expression hardened. "Deception! These are forgeries." "No," Ami said quietly. "They are Cassius's words. I recognize his heart in them." She stepped forward, standing beside Ramon. "For 1,000 years I dreamed of vengeance, but now I see a better path, not ruling but guiding, not conquering but building." She turned to the assembled Imperial forces. "You've served a lie. The Imperium was built on half-truths and manipulation. I offer you choice. Continue serving shadows or help forge a new future." To Ramon's amazement, several Imperial officers removed their helmets. Others stepped back from Marcellus, whose face had contorted with rage. "Traitors!" he snarled. "I'll have you all executed." "No," said a firm voice from among the Imperial ranks. A commander stepped forward, her insignia marking her as Fleet Admiral. "The Emperor serves the Imperium, not the other way around. If we've been deceived for a millennium, the people deserve the truth." Marcellus's hand moved to his sidearm, but before he could draw, Ami's power manifested, not in destruction, but in precision. The weapon crumbled to dust in his holster. "It's over, Marcellus," she said softly. "Cassius's true legacy ends your false one." The architect's shoulders slumped, defeat evident in every line of his ancient body. "What happens now, Empress? Will you take my place? Become the very thing you claim to reject?" Ramon stepped forward, taking Amy's hand. "No, we're not replacing one tyrant with another." He looked at the Imperial officers who had removed their helmets. "The galaxy deserves leadership that answers to its people, not to ancient gods or immortal architects." Ami smiled at him, pride evident in her emerald eyes. "My husband speaks wisely. The age of emperors and empresses is over. Let the worlds of the galaxy determine their own futures." 3 months later, Ramon stood on the balcony of a modest estate overlooking the crystal seas of Nerio, a small world on the outer rim, far from imperial politics and the chaos of the ongoing Reformation. Behind him, the doors slid open as Ami stepped out, the evening breeze playing with her short black hair. "The last imperial holdouts have surrendered," she announced, joining him at the railing. "The Transitional Council is establishing democratic systems on all former imperial worlds." "And you're really okay with that?" Ramon asked, studying her face. "No urge to step in and rule the right way?" She laughed, leaning against him. 1,000 years ago? Absolutely not. But now? She shook her head. I've had enough of destiny and duty for several lifetimes. I find I prefer simpler pleasures. Like what? He teased, slipping an arm around her waist. Like teaching our child about the stars without the burden of conquering them, she replied, placing his hand gently on her abdomen. Life growing inside me, a miracle even an ancient goddess never experienced. Ramon's eyes widened. You're... Yes, she confirmed, her smile radiant. It seems our bond created more than just political revolution. He pulled her close, overcome with emotion. I never thought, I was a thief, a wanderer, and now you're a husband, soon to be a father and the man who helped free a galaxy, she finished for him. Not bad for someone who just wanted to steal a pretty rock. Padawan hovered nearby, his systems humming contentedly. I've updated my projections, sir. Your chances of a long, satisfying life have risen dramatically to 87.6%, assuming, of course, that you avoid teaching your offspring your more questionable skills. Ramon laughed. No promises there, Padawan. Some traditions deserve to continue. As the three sons of Nerio set across the crystal sea, casting the world in shades of gold and amber, Ramon reflected on the strange journey that had brought him here. From descendant of a traitor to husband of a goddess to architect of a new era, his life had become a legend beyond anything he could have imagined. But looking at Ami, not as the Jade Empress or the Green Death or any of her fearsome titles, but simply as his wife carrying their child, he knew that the greatest treasure he'd ever stolen was her heart. And this time, he had no intention of giving it back. Dear listeners, while that's a wrap on Stone and Flame, Awakening the Goddess, I hope you enjoyed this cosmic ride through temples, spaceships, and thousand-year-old divine marriages. Not bad for what started as a simple heist, right? If you're still processing how our lovable rogue Ramon went from, I'll just steal this shiny thing, to, I'm married to a green space goddess and we're overthrowing galactic tyranny, don't worry, he's equally confused. As Padawan would calculate, the probability of this outcome was approximately 0.0003%, but hey, that's the space adventure business for you. For the next few days, I promise we'll take a breather from galaxy-spanning conspiracies and ancient divine beings. Coming up are some lighter tales with plenty of humor and straightforward plots. No need to track complex timelines or millennia-old betrayals. I think we've all earned a vacation from saving entire civilizations, don't you? After all, not every story needs to involve accidentally marrying all-powerful deities, though I hear it does wonders for your resume. Sometimes you just want to kick back with a good blaster at your side, a sarcastic droid making unhelpful probability calculations, and absolutely zero responsibility for restoring cosmic balance. So until our next adventure, remember what Ramon would say. When stealing ancient artifacts, maybe don't read the inscriptions out loud. Words to live by. May your own personal Padawan calculate your survival odds more optimistically than 12.8%. The author. P.S. For those wondering about Padawan's wedding toast at Ramon and Ami's official ceremony, yes, it did include 17 statistical references and a detailed probability analysis of their relationship's longevity. Ami found it charmingly quaint. Ramon just drank more,